others. 3 of Rachel's books have also been adapted to the screen. Dash and Lily for Netflix, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, and Naomi and Eli's No Kiss List. And also Rachel and Mel are both my friends, and we all shared a women's only office in Larchmont, which was how Rachel and I,
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. It's no longer how we first met. So I got this book early. I read it over the summer and I loved it. I devoured it. And then when Rachel asked if I would moderate this discussion, I read it for the second time. And this is a holiday book and it's holiday season. And it was even more fun to read it over holiday season. It was, it was great to read it on a beach. It was even better to read it like when it's like kind of chilly outside. So let's start with what the inspiration for the book was. And, if for anybody who hasn't read it here, can you give us a little synopsis?
Sure. The book is about 2 former best friends who both married and divorced the same man. And they meet up in Vienna at Christmas time for one of the ex's daughter's wedding. And unfortunately, the father of the bride, who is the infamous ex of everybody, has gone missing. And so the 2 other exes have to kind of team up and get over all their issues with each other and find him and get this wedding on. And as I said, it's sort of like Vienna at Christmas and a wedding, Christmas wedding. What could go wrong? And the answer is everything. It's fun. I hope, but hopefully fun with a little bit of heart as well.
And it's so fun with endless heart.
Well, thank you. And it started, I mean, Mel and I have both done collaborations before, and, every person's process is different, and every person's process with a particular collaborator is different. This one started off as the phrase, my ex-husband's ex-husband just came to mind. And I went, that's funny. And then I happened to see Mel not long after that. I was like, I happened to come up with the story about that. And I've gotten to the point in my own career where it's really hard for me to finish anything. And I don't know if that's middle age or laziness, probably more the latter. But I do find now that collaborating on something with somebody, especially another writer that I love, helps me move it along instead of just write a little bit and then I'll come back to it another time. And that's how it was born. And also, I mean, I believe in wish fulfillment, and I've never been to Vienna. So this is a shameless pitch to get somebody somewhere to send me to Vienna. I have a lot of things to eat there.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process of how you wrote it together? Because, writing a novel on your own is one thing, but writing it, and obviously you've worked with other writers co-authoring novels. So 2-part question. One is, how did you divvy up the work? How did you write it? And then how was it different from working with other co-authors?
Yeah, so the other books I've written have all been written with the same person, and his name is David Levithan. He's also a publisher. He publishes the books called The Hunger Games. You might have heard of them at some point. And so it's very hard to get David's time. He's always got a million things going. I mean, it's exhausting. And so I learned a long time ago that the way to get things done with David is to not bug him about it. Like we don't sell things in advance, and we just start with the chapter and pick up where the other person left off. Mm-hmm. We kind of fell into that by accident, but having fallen into that by accident, we learned it worked for us as a team. And that is, we had sort of have a basic concept in mind. And then we have 2 characters. He writes one character and I write the other character. And we each write from that perspective. And we trade chapters and we pick up where the other person left off. There's no outline or plan. We usually have a vague idea of where we want it to end. But we don't really talk about it along the way. And at first that started off more as convenience, because it's just hard to get David's time and his attention. But then we realized it really worked well because the spontaneity that it was bringing to our chapters was really fun to work with. And we would send things off. I'd always send things off with like these little, stuff in there that I would hope he would pick up on and take into the next chapter, and he never would. And it was always a completely different trail. And we found after we finished our first book together that like that actually worked well to do that. And my favorite story about doing that with the male author, one of the reasons I wanted to write with him originally is I felt like I was good at writing a male voice, but when it came to sort of plot things, everything I would decide for the male character to do would be female wish fulfillment. And I was calling it wrong there. So that when I did write a book, we wrote this book called Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And when we sat down to read it as a whole for the first time, as we were editing it, I remember there was this one section where we got to, it was one of David's chapters, and I had something to say to him. And it was that he had Nick and Nora spend this one night together in New York, kind of chasing a band. It takes place in one night. And there's a point in which Nick leaves Nora and just goes off and does other things. Doesn't feel bad at all about leaving, about the fight that they had, doesn't think about it. And I was like, we got to that chapter and I said, you need to change this chapter. You need to think about what he did wrong because Nora really stews about it, and you should change that. And just looked up at me and he goes, no. And he kept moving on to the next page. And I was about to fight back, and then I realized like that's why the book works. It's that kind of spontaneity that I'm talking about, and bringing a male voice to do a choice that I never would have made as an author. So I tried to do all of these things with Mel, and when I had a different collaborator, and none of it worked. It was sort of the basic idea, but she's also extremely busy. She's always working on 80 different books at one time, as well as a million other things. And she's a very active parent and family person. So her time is also very difficult to get. So I tried to do that, but we also had a very tight deadline because the book was set at Christmas and they wanted it to, and we have a delivery coming in. He's very polite. He's like, can I come in? Come on in. There's a seat. She's very busy. And so I tried to do that, but we had a tight deadline because it was a Christmas book and they wanted it turned in by a certain time so they could have it come out at Christmas time. And it quickly became apparent that we needed to have an outline. It had to be very, we know exactly what's going to happen because we can't fall into holes. A lot of anyone here who's a writer knows that you go down rabbit holes and characters take you in other directions. And once you start to go down, it takes a long time to worm your way back out. So that could not happen. And then the other thing that happened was we were trying to trade off and like, I'll pick up where you left off. And then at a certain point, Mel was so late with her chapters that it became clear that we had to start writing in tandem. You just write your chapters. We're going to outline the whole thing and I'll write my things and we'll put it all together. So I think the book was due like January 15th. And as of like December something, like in the middle of December, she hadn't started on her chapters. And she was like, oh, and I don't work at Christmas. And I was like, I guess we're going to be a little late with it. And then, and I got a little smug about that. Well, I was like, I can take my time. Mel's going to take her time. We're fine. And then in like the last week, a couple of days before New Year, she texted me. She's like, okay, I put all my chapters in. I did them. And I was like, what? Because she can really power write, and she was visiting her in-laws. She didn't have internet, and she just got it all done. And that was incredibly humbling, especially because I was really smug, like I'm ahead of you. And then I wasn't. And the chapters were good too. It wasn't like it was terrible stuff, because that's what would happen if I power write, it will. But anyway, luckily we did have that outline, and it wasn't the usual holes that you fall down. Did not happen. And that was the learning experience for me with working with Mel. With David, it was that, about kind of learning about the male perspective and letting that be and not trying to edit or organize it. And with Mel, it was like, she's going to get it done and it's going to be good, and just trust that.
So if David played the male characters or wrote the male characters, who wrote which character? Wrote which character in this book?
Mel could tell you more about that when she's here, but I wrote the character Audrey, who's the first ex-wife, and she wrote Ian, who is the first ex-husband. Rather, they both married the same man. And Mel, as Mel says, she knows more gay people, and as in her friend groups, she was like, I'm writing Ian, right? And I was like, yeah, you're writing Ian. And that's how that was chosen. It was very simple and easy.
And okay, so if you're Audrey and she's Ian, who is Beau, who's the ex-husband of both of them?
Well, Beau doesn't have any of his own chapters.
No, I
from
know,
his
but
perspective.
who was he? Who was he in your mind? Was he somebody that the two of you came up with together?
Yeah.
Was there a specific person that Mel said he's
Yeah,
this guy?
that's a great question. It sort of evolved in our earliest conversations. We were talking. One of the things we were talking about when we were just playing around with the idea was just we both come from the world of children's publishing, and we were playing with the idea of having the Ian character be from that world, and then we thought maybe Beau would have tried to get into that world, and that sort of triggered another conversation. And at a certain point, we had written the first couple of chapters like we got to figure out who Beau is, so it was a little bit more result of conversation because I feel like the Beau stuff came after we had already started. Like we just
really?
knew they had this ex-husband, and we knew he had to have some kind of charisma or appeal such that both people who were best friends would both marry and divorce him, would sacrifice their friendship for that. So what does that mean in terms of who he would be?
Right.
And as we talked it through, it would be somebody who is, well, obviously very sexually fluid, but also someone who's just very charismatic. I think we've all known somebody like that who, you kind of love to hate them, but you still love them no matter what, because they're just charming and fun. And I always say, I would say about Beau, he's the life of the party until the party ends hard.
Yeah.
But he's that person that you want to be around. I certainly knew somebody like that in my youth who made a big impact on me, and I could tap into that. And then it made a lot of sense. And as we were talking about it more, that he could be that he could do so many things without a lot of repercussions and get away with that. And really the only way to do that in our society is, well, first of all, it helps to be male. But second of all, is you're a trust fund baby of some sort. You don't have to pay the consequences that other people do in the same kind of ways because you don't have to worry about holding down a job or something like that. But we made it a little worse in that he's one of those kind of poor trust fund kids. So, he doesn't quite know when the money's coming in, but it is going to come in and it's going to be erratic. But because of that, he's somebody who was never really able to hold down a consistent job or anything like that. It has the ability, because he has this sort of backup foundation to sort of go from aimlessly from thing to thing to thing and just be charming and delightful without sort of the consequences that the rest of us pay.
Yeah.
That was sort of the genesis of that character, but it wasn't there immediately.
And were the other characters, so there's Georgia, which is Beau's mother, who is like a hilarious, and the daughters, and Colin, who is another friend. So there's a really rich cast of characters that all come in at some point. So I'm always curious, as somebody who has written novels and also written in a writer's room where, everybody is collaborating.
Right.
So how much are any of the characters or one specific character that you were like, I know who this person is, or that Mel said, I want this character, I want Georgia to be like my mother-in-law, or whatever that is? Was there anybody, or they were all concoctions that you came with together?
Yeah, I think that's sort of one of the main differences between me and Mel as collaborators versus like me and David. David and I are both very character-based writers, whereas I really am a character-based. I'm not that good with plot. Plot comes afterwards for me. I figure out who the person is. But Mel is very plot-focused. So I think that for me at least, kind of figuring out who the family was, that part was easy.
Right.
Figuring out like how they're going to get from point A to point B and still make sense at the end, that was much harder. And that is, Mel is so gifted at that because she is so productive and she has to, because she does do so much, she has to stay on time with things. Mm-hmm. So there's no time to kind of figure things out later. So the good thing is I have a very good foundation of who somebody is. Right. And she has a very good sense of what they need to do to move the story along.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you were talking about how you worked with David, I was thinking about, I don't know if anybody here watches any cooking shows, like reality shows like Top Chef or anything, but they always do those competitions where you start a dish and then you have to leave and the other person comes in. And have you ever seen this?
Wow.
And
That would make me crazy.
but that's what you and David were doing, where someone comes in and then you have to continue, making the dish, and then you come back in and it's like, what did he do? He made it into a stew or whatever it is. So did you ever find in writing this with such a kind of specific outline that it curbed your creativity at all?
No, and one of the reasons, this is, I think, the other great thing I learned from working with David, and this is just a note about collaboration in general, because we've talked to a lot of people who collaborated, and everybody's experience and process is different. What David and I had instinctually, and like I said, we didn't kind of realize it until we were on the other side of it. We were kind of just writing blindly and fun at first, but is that the key to any kind of successful collaboration, and this would be the same thing on the cooking shows or whatever, is trust. You need to trust the other person that the choices they make are their choices, and you are collaborating so that you can trust that. Like I always say with David and I, it's like he writes his sections, I write my sections, and we're pretty hands off with each other. And I always say, it's like, I tell people the analogy is we live in the same house on different sides of it, and sometimes we get together in the kitchen and talk. And I don't think that would work for everybody. With Mel, I think because we were on such a tight deadline, there wasn't even time for that. But also, I've known her for so many years. I've read her books. I felt that. But there's a lot of people who've been like, we should collaborate. And I'll be like, no, we shouldn't.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea.
Exactly. It's just like it's almost an instinct that, we can trust each other with our work.
Was there any moments then where she got your chapters or you got her chapters and you were like, this is not what we talked about, or like, could we change this, or did you actually edit or rewrite it? How did that work?
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of that, but maybe because we broke it down so much. So I think more of that came in the process when we were figuring out the beats of the story.
Yeah.
No, I can't really think of. It's impossible to write anything that quickly and have those kind of, like, we both understand, like, that the rabbit holes I was talking about, it's sort of the same thing. It's not just when your characters go places you didn't expect, but it's when the collaborator is all of a sudden like, I think we could do this differently. And maybe we could, but it's just, you're opening up a whole other new can of worms. And maybe because I've known her for so long, and we come from the same world in terms of publishing and like our backgrounds in that way. So there was an easy and implied trust. But yes, that could happen. It hasn't happened to me, I guess is what I'm saying. And I didn't experience that with her. And I definitely loved, like you mentioned, the mother-in-law character, Georgia, who's just hell on wheels. And Mel wrote the best Georgia stuff. At a certain point, I'm like, I'm leaving those sections to you. You do her much better than I do. And there's one where they have to go and confront Mel, and I was like, I left that for you at the bottom of the chapter for you to pick up. And she did a beautiful job with it, and much better than I would have done, because I could have continued on with it.
Would they have to confront Ian?
Or Ian has to, but you'll notice if you read the book, well, when you do that, it's Audrey who says to Ian, "You need to go figure this out," and that's me telling Mel, "You need to go figure this out in the next chapter," because I don't think I can write that chapter as well as you can.
Yeah, that's so funny. I love that, where you're actually like kind of talking
exactly
through the book, and you feel that like these two. It's really a two-hander. It's like these two exes were friends first, and you just, it's like any great love story. It's a friendship love story, and you just want to see it. There she is, the famous Cruz.
Yay! Dealing with my family.
Oh, are you okay?
I'm okay. You're gonna talk.
Welcome. Yeah, we're gonna talk.
What was I just saying?
I don't know.
This
happened on our last one where we kept forgetting the questions that we were asking.
Right?
You,
we were just chatting.
Can I intro you? Can I just talk about you for a second? So Melissa de la Cruz is the #1 New York Times, #1 Publishers Weekly, #1 indie-bound best-selling author of critically acclaimed and award-winning novels for readers of all ages. So your bio says many of her more than 70 books, but I think it's 80 books now?
80 books.
Over 80 books. I'm waiting
Yes.
for it to be over 90. So we're going to get there.
We'll have a big party for 100.
Yes, I can't wait. Mel throws a great party. But they've topped USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times bestseller lists, and her work has been published in over 20 countries. She's the author of Disney Descendant series with 4 of the biggest movies on Disney Channel and Disney Plus. Her Witches of East End series was an hour-long drama for Lifetime. Her Hallmark movies include many. And she lives in West Hollywood with her husband, and her daughter is now in college.
Yes,
which I know.
thank you.
So we have been talking about the process of the two of you working together. And so we heard about Rachel's other
Writing partner.
writing partner.
And Mel sometimes we're like, we'd read, she's like, I'm your favorite
Yeah,
now.
am I the favorite? I want to be the favorite. I always want to be the most loved.
So I was curious how this experience writing this with Rachel was different from your other experiences co-writing in the past.
I mean, I think it was really fun because it was like a serial novel. So we emailed each other the chapters. So Rachel would write a chapter and then I would write the next chapter and we would wait for the next chapter. And so it was really fun. It was like Mad Libs, like I didn't know what Rachel would write. And at one point I didn't write back and I was like, I'm too busy. Yeah.
I know, they are saying we reached a stalemate, and
Yes.
then you came through like nobody's business in the end, and snuck up them all in.
Yeah.
And I was feeling very smug about how I was so far ahead in my chapters, and then she just blew me out.
And I was like, I just need 2 weeks to concentrate. Just need 2 weeks,
Yeah, when I say that, I mean 2 years. It's just awesome to me.
But her
I
that
dropped
so
the ball.
quickly.
The email chain died.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't have time. Like right now, I cannot go back and forth, but he had an outline. So I was like, can we just write our chapters without seeing each other's chapters?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then is that how you worked with other co-authors or writers?
Margie's here.
Margie
and I wrote
yeah.
How did we do it, Marg? I don't even remember.
This is the legendary Margaret Stoll.
There
For anyone who doesn't know.
We
We
did
had
it
an out-
differently.
Yeah.
We always outline weekly.
Yes.
And then
You wrote a lot. And
yeah.
then
I wrote a lot of we
Yeah,
did
in the
two
beginning.
together, and I wrote the first half
Yeah.
and you did the second
Am
half.
my
That's
voice
what-
triggering you?
No, I'm laughing at how graciously you handled the notes.
Yeah, like when I disappeared.
So so you two
We
worked
also write a book too. We wrote 2 books together.
2 books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were they called?
Joe and Laurie, which is Little Women, where Joe and Laurie get together. It's like the best.
I wrote that. That was fan fiction for
For
ourselves.
us.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, this is a good opportunity, I think. There is a section in the book, a passage, where Ian and his agent Damien are talking about the publishing industry, and they're talking about because Ian kind of like gets a little canceled in the beginning, and he is complaining about being pigeonholed as a queer author or as a children's fiction author. And so I was just wondering how much of this is how you feel about the current state of publishing and or your own careers. And maybe Mel should start since you came.
I mean, it was kind of a fun way to talk about the publishing industry without talking about it, but for sure, and it was so fun because Ian, we named him after Ian Falconer, who
Wrote the Olivia books.
who wrote the Olivia books, who was one of our favorite children's book writers. And it was kind of an homage to him, not at all his personality or how he looked.
Yeah, we don't know anything about
We
it
don't know,
otherwise.
but we just loved him, And so it was a little bit, maybe a little gossipy about who the villain was in the children's publishing industry. We won't say.
Yeah, certain characters might have been named or
Inspired
by certain villains.
Horrible
Yeah.
people.
God, I love it.
Next on TMZ.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it was fun to kind of vent, and make fun of an industry that we knew so well.
Yeah, and especially in such a facile way where there's really no consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Nobody would take us seriously.
Yeah.
It's in a rom-com,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And have you ever felt that way in your career, either one of you, as like that you were kind of stuck in the YA hole or world
Yeah,
or both?
definitely.
And how did you get out? This is an adult novel. Like what do you just wrote your way out?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing to do. I mean, I'm very typical of a lot of YA writers, at least of my generation. I think younger YA writers now grew up with that book being a huge industry. When I grew up, YA meant Judy Blume, and that was pretty much it. And what we consider Judy Blume to be now would be more middle grade. So I didn't grow up with this legion of, writers who had come up in that world. So for me, when the first YA book I wrote, I didn't know it was YA. I got told that later. The label was put on me. And having been labeled that way, I was perfectly happy. It was like, I love the book. I love the genre. I love being part of it as it started to explode. It was a really exciting time to be there. But it also changed. And and any YA writer will tell you, like, it's very easily dismissed. I can't tell you how many times I would have, people who are related to me and be like, well, I'm sure I'll love your book, but it's not for me. It's for everybody. It is To Kill a Mockingbird not for you because it's got a, preteen narrator. That's a label that's been put on it by somebody else. Today, To Kill a Mockingbird or Catcher in the Rye would be published as YAs, not as adult books.
Yeah.
So it's there's a certain prejudice that comes along with it from other people. And what I also have found that's really disturbing is that because I primarily write teenage girl characters, is that there's this assumption that gets made that somehow it's lesser than. And just on behalf of teenage girls, that bothers me. This assumption that if you're writing from that perspective, something about it is more frivolous, and teenage girls and gay men are pretty much at the forefront of every big cultural shift, and so, yeah, it was just a question of writing something else and somebody else putting another label on it. But I feel like all my books were for adults and for YAs. This book is for YAs also.
Yeah.
I don't feel that different. Like, I never felt like I won't be a real writer until I publish an adult book. I felt like I was always one, but like the label is put on by other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because we wrote in YA, I was able to do lots of different genres. I was able to write fantasy, sci-fi, middle grade. Like, it was like a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
And I really didn't care that nobody cared. Like, I was like, yeah, nobody cares about us, but it's fine. I don't know. Like, that never, like, I was a journalist in New York. I did the whole Prestige, Condé Nast, and all that. My dream was to be, in the New Yorker, P.G. Woodhouse. And then my editor was like, oh, you're really good at the teen voice. Do you want to do that? And I was like, I never thought about that. And I was like, oh, this is actually where I belong, And I was just like, oh, I'm really good at this. And it was so fun to know what I was good at. So I really didn't care about all that. So when I was like, oh, I'm going to do adult books, it was like, oh, okay, I'll do adult books now. I don't know. It was not like, I didn't care about it once I knew I was good at it.
You're fluid in that way.
Genre fluid. You're genre fluid.
I had a similar thing when I was struggling to be published for the first time. I had written 3 books that had been, submitted to publishers and were ultimately rejected. And the feedback that I kept getting is that when you have these characters who are teenagers, that part of the book seems to shine better than the rest of it. And you seem to be that somebody said to me once, it seems that when you write from the perspective of a teenager, you get stuck there. And maybe you should consider staying there, from in your writing. And I took that advice, and that was the first YA book I published.
That's amazing. I wanted to talk for a second about adapting your novels for TV and film, because both of you have had your novels adapted and both of you have adapted your own.
Sort of.
Yes. So I was wondering, two-part question. one is I had a book come out this May, and I went on tour and I met a lot of authors in the process, and one of the things when they heard that I was a TV and feature writer, they were like, how do I option my book? Like nobody, they have, some of them were best-selling authors, and but like hadn't optioned a book, didn't know what to do. So number one is like, if you have any advice for authors who have books who don't know how to motivate their agents or don't know how to get to that next step, what would the advice be? And then also just what the experience was of adapting your own and having, your work adapted.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if they're not getting, if their agents aren't doing that for them, get another agent. Because, when I was a starting up author, I didn't know how to do that either. And I happened to be very lucky that I had a really great, from the get-go, books to film person. I mean, she was dedicated within the agency just for that. And also it was a good time because YA was just starting to, explode. So that would be the number one piece of advice. And the second is, meet other writers who have had some success in having things optioned. Say, how did you do that? How did that happen? Hear their stories from them. I've been very lucky because I had such a good agent, and she really got and she worked for, she was at WME, so they have their all packaging, so she could find a writer for it, she could find a director for it. And the harder part is finding those people who will attach themselves to it. The first one that got adapted, Nick and Nora, we just were extraordinarily lucky because it was a competitive sale to a publisher, and then that breeds its own kind of hype. And Alicia, my agent, had it sold to the movies before we had even signed the contract for the book. And that's very unusual.
Yeah.
But so I'm like kind of this like Cinderella story in that way. I don't have the story of like all the years you spent waiting for that. That just kind of came out of the gate like that, which was, and because it was competitive, which is not usually the case, but if you're lucky enough to be fortunate that way, we got to choose between different producers. We got to choose the writer we liked to adapt it. And, they had to pitch us basically. So it's extremely fortunate, but that's really not usually the way that it goes. With it. And Dash and Lily was kind of the same, although that went through many incarnations, before it got made by somebody who was never involved in the original pitch. And it had a very big sale, again, before the book had come out, and then just died with a lot of talent attached. And because people weren't making movies like that at the time. And then as the streamers started to do a lot of novelizations, and also YA had become more popular, then the door opened again. And there was a writer who was very interested in it, and he pitched us, and we were like, yeah, we like your take. And that's how that, and it was also fortunate, it was good timing again, that there was so much, it was sort of during this content boom. Remember those days? They were great. And I only wrote one episode.
We needed to make more money during the boom.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, I only just got started. So I only wrote one episode of that. So that was my involvement with it. But I mean, I got very lucky.
And you were happy with the adaptation.
Yeah, I mean, this is the key thing, and not everybody really has this, that we got to talk to the writers who wanted to work on it and producers, and we really understood they had to tell us their specific take on it. So in the end, it's sort of like that issue I was talking about before, which is trust. We had to listen to what they had to say and trust, like, yes, you were going to do what you just said and not just completely change the game, once you've been able to option it. And so, yes, but we also had the luxury of going into this knowing what the take was already versus other things I've had optioned that were much more in the air. And like there was somebody who wanted to do something with one of my works, and I saw the treatment they had written, and it was offensive. I was like, no, there's no amount of money, and it's just it was almost a different title and the different names, and I was like, go write your own story. This has nothing to do with my book. I mean, I'm flattered that you'd want to, but this is a completely different thing. You go do that.
Yeah.
So it's different each time, and it gets, as I'm sure anybody here who's in the industry will say, it's only getting harder and harder with all the contraction and all the things happening where they just want these, huge tentpole things or huge IP or huge talent attached to it, and there's so much less room now for smaller ideas or
All I do was turn down stuff. I mean, it was so funny. My first novel, I just remembered this. I was like, oh my God, we had an option and it was not Steven Spielberg. So, and I remember my brother-in-law, who was still just my sister's boyfriend, they were business people, and the option came in and it was, at least they still option. Now they want to shop your book without an option. Like now they don't even want to pay for an option. Back then, this was like 1999. Yeah, 1902. I mean, it came with money attached with these two showrunners from CBS, and they wanted to turn my first book, which was a kind of satirical, kind of P.G. Wodehouse take on fashion in New York. And they were two young showrunners, and I literally turned them down because, like, my brother-in-law said, "Well, what if somebody else comes by who's bigger?" And it's like, nobody's coming by. This is who likes your book,
Yeah.
And I really regretted it. But I was just stupid. I was young and stupid, and you have no idea what Hollywood is like, and you think Hollywood is going to be like, this wave the magic wand, and really, there's no reason to say no because other people are going to say no down the line. So it really shouldn't be your no that stops the project. But even after that, I still said no. Blue Bloods was like, I did that series for 10 years. I turned down every option every year, I could have a really bad vampire movie right now that maybe was redone 3 years later, and it's like, and it's funny. I was like, well, I'm still writing it, and I don't want somebody to do it while I'm still writing it. And I wanted it to be my vision. I was just stupid. I really, and now it's like anybody who wants my book, it's fine. Like I did 4 Hallmark movies. None of them are like anything like I wanted at all.
And you wrote those?
I did the first script, which they toss and burn. It's like,
And those weren't based on books, so those were just
2 of them were based on my books.
On your books. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also want to say for all the very lucky things I've had to happen, I've had things that have gone out to the market that were stacked with talent, and it's like, this is a sure thing. Nothing. Crickets.
Yeah.
So
it's also the timing.
Yeah. So much about timing, and also you don't know what they might have just bought.
Right.
That was similar, or you don't know what scandal is behind this person who was attached to your book, or that hasn't broken yet. There's so many other things, and for all the great things I've had happen, I've also had plenty that were terrible options, or just seemed like they had a lot of potential and were sure things. And if I've learned anything, is that the sure thing is not a sure thing.
Yeah,
it's not.
So this feels like a good moment to talk about adapting this book. And you talk about in the book, you actually say you're describing something in Vienna, and you say it looked like a Hallmark movie. And so I guess my question to you is like, do you want to adapt this book? And if you do, which I think you do, is it a movie? Is it a limited series? Is it a Hallmark movie? Is it more elevated than that? Like how do you see it, and how would you write it in a similar way that you wrote this?
Yeah, we kind of constructed it with the 3-act structure in mind. I mean, originally we did conceive it as a movie. We're like, we'll never sell it this way. And to write it as a book, it was easier because then that made us figure it out, rather than have these kind of lofty ideas about it. We definitely want to adapt. We've met with some producers that we like, but it's a long road.
Insurance. I'm just in it for an insurance.
Yeah, sure.
But I think we talked about TV series versus film, and we really feel like it's a movie. It's a contained world, and more an elevated movie. Like it could be sort of The Holiday or The Family Stone, something like that. Very lofty ambitions. We'll see where it goes. We start at the top and work our way down, and see what happens.
Okay, so talking about the holidays, the Ian character hates Christmas. And since you wrote the Ian character, is that your thing?
No, I love Christmas.
Okay,
that was actually hard.
Okay.
Because I was just like, oh, Christmas, but I got into him, like I get why he didn't like Christmas, so I had him like always go to St. Bart's, and I was like, I like that.
Yes. Okay, so I want to do a quick lightning round of questions, and then we'll open it up to questions here. Okay, this is my little lightning round. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
I think Christmas, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Favorite holiday book?
Ooh.
You can say my ex-husband's
My ex-husband,
Yeah.
because immediately
there a
I think
Christmas
of Elm.
book? Like,
I
what
think
is
of
I mean,
it?
there's
movies,
so
yeah.
many holiday, like I just
Okay,
cannot-
Little Women. It starts with Christmas.
Oh, that's a
it's
good
not
one.
Christmas
And
without presents.
I
Good.
did think about it, and when I was growing up, my mother loved those books, and she just shoved them down my throat so much that Little Women, I was like, yeah, I love it. I just didn't love it as much as I should have because.
Okay, we can't be friends anymore.
It all ended here,
It all ended
and it's
right
on
here.
live stream.
I didn't know
we
that.
got that. Favorite holiday movie?
Oh, I don't know. My daughter watches like the 12 Shoes of Christmas. It's like really terrible kind of Hallmark or like ABC like movie. It's so cheap and she loves it. It's the 12 Shoes of Christmas. So
Okay.
we watch it every year. It's terrible.
Okay.
On my mother's side, I come from a very big Polish Catholic family. So my mother's the oldest of 10, and I have an aunt who's only 3 years older than me. And we're more like sisters. And her kids are like my kids. And every year since we were in our early 20s, we watched It's a Wonderful Life together. Like we can tell you that every line that comes up, and that's our thing. And Barb always falls asleep in the middle of it. But also it got to the point though, because we have seen it so many times, and that we start, everybody does their version where they're saying really rude things. And we started saying such rude things that like people had to stop watching it with us. And I was like, we got to clean it up. We got kind of cynical about this movie. We need to take a little time off and come back to it when we can be fresh and we're not just making terrible things that Mr. Potter says and does. So anyway, we came back to it last year. We were both in New York at the same time. They were doing a run of it in movie theaters, and we are much better in movie theaters when there's a public space and we can't do the dirtier version.
I just remember The Nightmare Before Christmas.
That's
a great
a good
That's
one.
my family's Christmas movie.
I'm Home for the Holidays.
That's
That was
a good
like,
one,
that
yeah.
was like always
Good jam.
my favorite. Okay, one gift you hope to get this holiday season?
I bought all my gifts already.
For
For
yourself?
my husband.
Okay, got it. Okay, one gift you're excited to give this season.
I'm going to a holiday market tomorrow. And so my family only exchanges Venmos. Okay. We're immigrants. And it's like we just give each other cash. And everybody looks forward to the cash. And it used to be cash, but now it's Venmo. So I don't even get a card for them anymore. It's like we sit around like this, and I look at my nephews and my nieces, and I go, Venmo, Venmo,
Cash.
Yeah. So I mean, and I find it sad. I would like to be in a family that, like, my daughter is really good at gift giving. And, I like that idea that you don't have to give people necessities, and like the immigrant in me is like, no, it's like we've scrimped and saved, and like now you get cash to buy whatever you want. Like my daughter actually she sees people and it's like, oh, this is what you like, Daddy. This is what you like, Mama. So like the year I watched all 40 seasons of Survivor, she got me the what is the bandanas that they all have, So I was like, that was awesome,
Cute.
I'll say my favorite gifts I ever gave was my Aunt Barb, her son Joey, who is in his early 30s now, but he lives in Brooklyn. He's like Brooklyn hipster, and we both happened to be in Tokyo at the same time. And he was there for a while for a job, and he just could not stop talking about it. The one thing he missed, even with all the great food in Japan, was a New York City breakfast sandwich, that you get on the street. I mean, he talked about it so much. So for Christmas, I got him this like art photograph from front of a breakfast sandwich. It was like one of my favorite gifts ever. I was like, when it's opening it, I'm like, open it.
That's so great. Okay, last thing, and then we'll open up to questions. Can you say Apfelstrudel?
Apfelstrudel.
Apfelstrudel. That's a good
Is it
one. Yeah.
Apfelstrudel? So
I would say I wrote all my chapters without any Vienna, any details, nothing. And Rachel would be like, can we get a little more Vienna?
I think we need a trip to Vienna.
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
This is why we
This
wrote
is a
the
whole
book.
shameless
Yeah.
plot for
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah.
I hope everybody comes.
Yes.
Let's make a party of it.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I wanted to, it's like a question, I have two parts. One is that I feel like I spaced out for a couple decades. I do write, and like it's sort of like memoirs, but it's often young. So it used to be called coming of age, I thought. And so I was in a writing group, and they were like, "No, you have a great voice. You'd be a young adult." And I was like a little insulted at first. I was like, "But it's like literary." So when did that happen? That coming of age became young adult? That's one quick little question.
I think that I think that the big turning point was Harry Potter when it exploded. The readership exploded. The readership exploded so much that there was so much other things that came along with it, and that's when that was sort of the turning point in my opinion.
And also the Sisters of Traveling Pants.
Yeah.
You know, that was like
I
one of the
spaced
first YA books. And that's when my editor said, "Oh, there are these books, Traveling Pants, Gossip Girl. We think that you would be good at this." And I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." You know, like, why not? You know,
Okay,
I'm
so I missed
immature.
that part. The other thing I wanted to ask is, you said my ex-husband's ex-husband. That's a good idea. And then is that how the idea came about? And then you wrote the outline and gave it to your editors, and then they just said, "Okay, green light." Or
No, I mean, it's different with
You
each.
called me and said, "I have this idea," and then you said, "It's my ex-husband's ex-husband," and I said, "I'm in. I don't care what it is, but it sounds awesome, and I can do that."
And each time you sell a book is usually a different process, unless you're like a huge author of some sort. In this particular case, most adult publishers don't buy a novel unless it's finished, and Mel and I were never going to get it finished without a check.
Pay me.
So Mel actually sent it directly to one of the editors she worked with and said, "Are you interested in this?" And she was like, "Yes," but we only had a couple of chapters, but we sent her a few chapters.
My
and
dream
an
is to
outline.
sell things on a napkin. I will sell one line on a napkin and give me 7 figures.
I like the way you think.
Yeah, you know. That was 15 years ago.
Good question. What is your favorite? This is for both of you. What is your favorite journey when you start a book? Like, what's the
great
best?
question.
What's the best? Like, we all have something we all love to do, but there's a journey we take that is seamless. What would your favorite part of writing a book be?
Well, I have a 2-part answer for that. And first, because like I said, I'm a very character-based writer. So for me, it's a voice that comes into my head, and just I sort of walk around with it for a while, and the voice gets so big that I either have to sit down and do something with it or let it go. So, but I like that kind of figuring it out as I'm walking along in bits and pieces. But I also like the part when you sit down to write it and it changes. And it's not what you expect. And that means that the character has taken on their own thing. Like in Dash and Lily, we're talking about the holidays and who likes it and who doesn't. David wrote the first chapter of that, and it was about a character named Dash who hates Christmas, hates everything about it. And at the end, we have to meet Lily in the beginning of the next chapter. And I typically wrote teenage characters who are like myself, like, you know, kind of cynical and worldly. And I fully intended to write that character in Dash and Lily, and I sat down to write, and the first sentence I wrote that I had nothing to do with it just said, "I love Christmas." I was like, "Oh, you do?" And then it just became this riff on like loving every single thing so totally over the top, and it was a little bit annoying because I was very cynical about Christmas at that point, but then to have this voice, it's just very exciting to me when they start to talk for themselves rather than you figuring it out.
Yeah, I think the beginning is really fun. Like writing the proposal is really fun, you know, on my napkin.
The
you know.
honeymoon.
The honeymoon. And then the end is really fun. I really like delivering. I like when it's all done and it's beautiful, and you know, and I'm going to get paid. You know?
That's always you cannot undersell that enough at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but like the flow is nice when like, you know, you really feel like the chapter's working and like the characters are come alive. I think when they come alive is really fun. And it takes a long time for me. Like Rachel's very character based, so they're like alive from the first page. Mine are not. Mine are kind of like skeletal, it's plot, and it's like a whole thing where it's just like I hit all the plot beats, and then like maybe the third draft, like they start to become people.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody?
People always ask you what your favorite book is, but for me anyway, I have like 5 pages over my whole career, probably that I've liked, like all collected up if you count them. No, but I mean of like lines that I loved or moments that I loved or little speeches I loved. Do you guys have a moment in this book that you loved, either of each other's or of your own?
I mean, in the beginning when Ian's ranting about publishing, that was all me.
That's a shocker.
When he's like, you know, you wouldn't even know imagination if, you know, it bit you in the ass, and like, you know, what you write for children, and, you know, and it's like, that's why the books aren't selling, you know, so it's like, that was fun. I like that. And then we kind of took it down a little bit. We didn't want to offend too many people.
And for me, it was the sections where she wrote the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
They were just so great. And it was a character I conceived of as her being really evil, but she really nailed it in a way that I couldn't.
I know toxic people.
I didn't think she was like evil. Like I
No,
ended up,
that's because she is a good writer.
yeah, I ended up really loving.
I mean, I kind
loving
of related
Georgia.
to her.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. She was
I feel like I would have made her much more one-dimensional.
Yeah. I thought I understood that character, and I wondered if she needed her own spin-off book.
Right? Yeah. With the
That's on the
granddaughter.
napkin right now.
Yeah.
Give us money.
Exactly. Will there be a sequel?
We hope so. You know.
We have
Yeah.
ideas.
Talk to
we'll
Carmen.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. Our editor.
Yeah, Carmen.
Um,
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Jordan and I, we share an editor, and her book is very prominently displayed somewhere here. I saw it. But it's called Moms Like Us, and absolutely delightful
Thank you.
takedown of the LA private school industry right now. And yeah, sorry. Well, we get a sequel
No.
for that one.
I don't think so. I think look, I'm adapting it for TV.
Okay.
So, but yes.
And tell us about your process with that.
My process with that was I went to a really depressing back to school night when my daughter was neurodivergent, was applying to 7th grade, and I just felt like her school and her teachers didn't understand her, and or just weren't paying attention, and I felt like it was all on me, and I felt like there was a lot of bad behavior around me, but also was ridiculous, and so I just kind of like threw down all these pages and then didn't come back to it until 2 years later when there was a strike, and I was like, I need to sell something, and so I was like, how about this? And I sold it, and it's this to the same editor, little A, and now I'm adapting it for TV. Thank you guys.
Wait, I have a final
Yes.
question.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of along with that. You talked about possible adaptation for this. Is that something that's currently in the works or just being talked about?
We're in the
we're
very
working on it.
earliest stage of
Yeah, we've got some great producers who really loved it. You know, some women who really connected with it, and that's kind of what you want. You want people who like read the book and like see themselves and their friends, and it's really like it's a miracle when that happens. You know, like when people get what you're trying to do.
By the way, Mel's gonna send you her half of the screenplay for this tomorrow.
Great.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, actually, I'm the one slowing us down because I said I would write the first draft of the kind of the treatment they want us to do, and I'm the one who's like 3 weeks sitting on it. And
I already told him, I was like, see you in January. And then Rachel was like, no, we're going to send it before the break. I was like, oh, so sorry. We'll send it to you before the break.
yeah, so it's actually on me this time.
Okay. It's fun. I mean, I'm kind of, I'm so happy to be pulled into this project. I mean, it was so fun, so.
Yeah, it's a labor of love. And anyway, we're at the very earliest stages. There's nothing really to say yet, but here's hoping there'll be more to say in the new year.
Very exciting.
Another question.
Oh,
Yes.
last
You know me, I'm fascinated. Sorry.
So,
So Do you guys pick editors that you like tend to go with? What happens when you collaborate? Like which way does it lean?
I mean, we see who's in the market
Got
for
it.
stuff.
Whoever
you
writes
know?
the check.
Yeah.
Is it like if you have a preference for shopping, like some people might like Saks and some Saks that
Yeah.
might like Nordstrom's, right? Like, do you
Yeah.
It shifts so much though.
got it?
You
So it's
know?
ever changing.
It's ever changing because editors leave, they move houses, they close a certain imprint or division. It changes all the time. So it's sort of like you figure out what your project is, you figure out, are you going to try to sell it on a parcel and on a whole, and then you're like, okay, what does the market look like right now? But I think we all have, editors we love to work with and ones we don't. But it like I said, it shifts so much that you can't really write in mind with, you can only be for that person.
So when you collaborate, you're still just shopping it out. It doesn't go, it's not attached to the person. It's the book.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
I just realized I'm visually imagining every time you talk about your editors, that they're in New York somewhere. Is that where they're?
Well, maybe they are.
Carmen's in
Yes.
Chicago or something.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
Carmen's
right.
Yeah.
That's weird.
We have Carmen, their editor, was also my editor, which is fun.
And I haven't published a book for a while. So this is my first time since 2020. And now that my big thing to get used to is they do everything remote.
Yeah.
And so now so many, I think, don't live there.
Yeah.
And I'm catching up
But
late.
they don't live in LA,
Right.
right?
Some do actually,
Okay.
yeah. But now with
Yeah.
Zoom and the way everybody kind of is digital nomads, I don't
They
think
live
you
in
can-
our computers.
Yeah,
That's where they
exactly.
live.
That's exactly it.
They live in the boxes in our computers.
Are your book agents the same as your industry agents, your film industry agents?
That's a really good question. Mine aren't. I have a book. We had the same book agent who he's not. Is he your book agent?
I
Anyway,
don't
He
know.
sold this book.
yeah, he sold this book. He sold my last book, and he sold my first two books. But he and I don't work together anymore. But I still adore him personally. And I have a new book agent, and then I have been working with Gersh for film and TV for many, many years, and I have a manager also.
It's usually separate, but then, with everything shrinking, my book agent started to become a film and TV producer, but I also have a film. So I have like two managers and like no agents, but it's interesting. I mean, everybody's just trying to survive, right? So, and he was like, I'm going to do Hollywood, Mel. You want to do Hollywood with me? And I kind of resisted it for a long time because I was like, I like writing books, but like as the market shrinks for stories, you kind of have to be more flexible.
Yeah,
with everything.
yeah. And I was at WME for years where everything was in house. So I had the same book agent who also worked with, and they did everything in tandem and worked together as a team. And then everybody left, or it just different things happened. So it's different in each case. I don't think anyone will have a consistent story for you of how that works for them. It's different.
Well, they don't package anymore.
They do, but they want to package really big IP, so this is what I mean, where smaller things like this, it's a harder sell.
And Gersh sold the project that you're writing for television?
Yes.
I know Jordy sold it.
Yes, that's pretty much right. Yes, it was my friend at MGM who I went to. But I mean, yes, it was. And actually, my friend Tracy brought it into 20th. Like, I knew a lot of people from having worked, and so I did do a lot of the heavy lifting. But Gersh and my manager, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Got her paid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be signing books if anybody wants.
Congratulations again.
Thank
Can't wait for the next steps.
I'm glad I made it.
Yes, thank you for making